Hey everyone, Jason here. So I'm in Santiago de Compostela. It's been a few days since finishing the Camino Primitivo. When it first finished, I didn't really know what to say about it, my feelings about it, the experience, but I've had some time to reflect. And being my last day in the city, I thought I would take some time and record those thoughts. I think, first of all, I chose to do the Camino de Santiago because I am interested in doing distance walks. There's actually a few different ones in North America and in New Zealand and Australia that I'd like to do. But because of COVID, I was restricted to travel, where I could travel. And I started looking for alternatives. I came across the Camino as a suggestion of a good starter walk because it's not, I wouldn't say supported, but you're walking from town to town. And, this is a huge benefit in case I found it was just too much for me, that I would be able to stop, for whatever. First aid, stop to rest for a day or two, that kind of thing. A good intro. Now the thing is, there's a lot of different Camino de Santiago routes, and when I was looking at them, the first one that attracted me was Camino del Norte, but then because of other travel plans and things I want to do here in Europe, I realized that Del Norte wasn't going to work, but I knew also about Camino Primitivo, which was described as more challenging. They say it's the more difficult route because of the elevations that you hike through, and also that it's a scenic route. It's also said to be less traveled. So that actually attracted me a lot because I like to spend time in wilderness and I like a physical challenge. So I thought the Primitivo would probably be really the best choice for me, and that I could complete it in between 2 and 3 weeks. 3 weeks would be going very slow and 2 weeks would be going at a decent pace. What I found, and of course this is my take, and it's my perspective based on other trips that I've done. The Camino Primitivo does offer an opportunity to see some beautiful landscape in Spain. There's no question about that. I did also find it physically challenging. As far as people go, I found that there were actually more people on the path than I expected, especially at around the midway point, and afterwards I found a disappointing level of people. I don't know how this comment will go with some viewers, and I don't mean to offend anybody. I would actually say what I didn't like about doing the Camino was the people. At the same time, I have to say that what I loved about the Camino was the people. So now everyone has a different experience, but mine involved, being woken up at an albergue, on the third night by someone who was cycling through, coming in, and just stirring up the place. I had no sleep that night. At another albergue, I had my walking pole stolen. And then later on, through after Melide, the Camino Frances joins the path, and the crowds just became disappointing. I don't want to say if I knew it would be so crowded I wouldn't do the walk, but reading and researching that the Camino Primitivo was a quieter way and less people. I'd say that's not entirely true, since, you know, at about the 2/3 mark, you're like not overwhelmed with people, but you start having a lot of people around you. It's not quiet anymore. So I think a better way would say, you know, there's less people for 2/3 of the Camino Primitivo. After that, you join the Camino Frances, and which is one of the more popular routes, and so then now you're surrounded by people. There was one thing that I really hated about my Camino, and it was this. Of course, you're not going to have this problem. Most people are not going to have this problem. And I brought it upon myself, but setting up the camera to do these walk-bys every day, you know, when my feet were hurting, when my shoulders were hurting, my hips were hurting, when I was hurting and tired, yeah, it was a very challenging project to work on, because you know, you get to a moment, like my energy level is still recovering from doing the Camino, but you get to a point where you more or less hit a wall, and then to try to do anything outside of what you need to do is, yeah, taxing. So, but it was worth it to, you know, record the experience, share the experience. Still, it was a bit of a pain in the ass filming it. Another thing I didn't really care for was the food along the way. And this is you know, I don't mean to offend. I did have a few very, very good meals. But for the most part, yeah, the food along the way just didn't do it for me. Like to have like a croissant or a Napolitana, like a pastry with a coffee for breakfast, doesn't really do it for me. I did buy some fruit, and, you know, would have that on the trail. But, you know, when I was burning, you know, like 3,000, 4,000 calories a day, heading out in the morning, it would have been great to have, you know, a couple cups of coffee with, you know, whatever, sausage, eggs, and potatoes or something like that. I should say I did have a tortilla quite a bit, which is a combination of eggs and potatoes, but it wasn't satisfying for me for breakfast. And then the problem I found was that after breakfast, I'd be on the trail, and often there wouldn't be anywhere to eat, or I would find somewhere to eat. They would be closed because of siesta time, maybe not opening until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So, yeah, the food was lacking. Then at dinner time, again, sometimes the meal was like half decent, but often it was just like bar food. So ordering a pizza, and it's not made at a pizzeria or a restaurant, it's just like at a bar, and not the best pizza, or a hamburger or something like that. You know, the few times that I ate at an actual restaurant along the way was very good. You know, like had some incredible Asturian beef. It's funny to say that that was probably a highlight of the trip, but it was very good, very, very good. And other meals that, you know, were great, but like I think I probably had 3 good meals, maybe 4 in 15 days. So yeah, the food for me was disappointing. So now, to be honest, the most disappointing part of the Camino for me was arriving into Santiago de Compestela. Of course, there are a lot of other people doing the Camino. They're coming in from a lot of different routes, but the crowd was disappointing. You know, I got to the cathedral and it was just super busy. Set my GoPro down to get a shot of me arriving and sitting down, and there was a car in there that almost drove over my GoPro. There were protesters in there, and yeah, you know, it was just after being, 2 weeks working hard at something to arrive to crowds and, loud noise and chaos, it was disappointing. In some ways, I think that maybe it's good that it ends that way because it brings you back to reality of normal life. And in other ways, I think that the Camino should go in the other direction so that you start in the chaos and head out. And then maybe when you get to the other end, you have a peaceful ending. Now, I can say, getting out to Finisterre, Finisterre was a very nice little town, a beautiful beach, and that made up for it, to the point where if I was to plan to do this walk again, I would say I should have arrived into Santiago and the next day just head out again, straight to Finisterre. Finisterre is the end of the world. It is the end of the Camino. And I'm glad that I made it out there. But yeah, arriving to Santiago, the crowds, the noise, the chaos, it's not really what I had envisioned on a walk that's promoted as a spiritual path of some sort. So I think the best part of the Camino for me were the days from Teneo to Berdocido. I really loved the landscape through there. Leaving Teneo, you leave and you're heading up this hill and there's a valley and you look down and it's just such a stunning way. And the landscape continues to just be incredible all the way until you reach Berdocido. Well, even after, but that section, especially for me, was incredible. So the big question is, and this shouldn't be the big question, but it's interesting. So what happened was that I was planning to get into distance walking, and that's why I chose this. But then as I told people that I was doing the Camino, everybody said it was going to change my life and it was going to be a spiritual experience and all of this. I didn't think it would be, but I was told to be open to it. And I think this idea of being open to it may have also impressed upon me that it would be. And so this is what I've been reflecting on. This is kind of an expectation of the Camino. There's no question that I went through things. I had things going on in my personal life at the same time that were playing in my mind. I was in pain. A toe issue developed into a knee problem. My hips were sore. My shoulders. I don't talk about it in the video, but I developed a problem with a tooth, which caused the entire right side of my mouth to hurt, and I actually had the tooth pulled at a dentist yesterday. So I had physical things going on as well, which were challenging. And then when you're going through these physical challenges like this, and with fatigue, coupled with fatigue, and other things, language barriers, just being outside your comfort zone, I found myself looking more inwards. I was looking for inner strength, I guess, is what I would say. And so for that reason, I would say the Camino did have some type of spiritual impact on me, but probably not the type that I would think, going into it. What I found was that the Camino was a physical challenge, but it was equally a mental challenge. And the mental challenge was what I recognized that, in life, I spend a lot of time trying to stay physically strong, and that I should also do things to keep myself mentally strong. So I would say that was the lesson that I took from the experience. And going forward in life, I'll need to look for ways to, do this, so that the lesson is just not lost. Okay, so I'm going to admit to it. Strangely, magic does happen on the Camino. Of course, it's coincidence. I don't want to, put faith in magic and this, but yeah, one time I was walking and it was super crowded after Melide, and I was frustrated, thinking, I wish the other people were gone. Like, what are you doing here on my Camino? Well, I eventually got to thinking that, the people are like disruptive thoughts, and that I need to just let them go. Let them come and let them go. And soon after coming to terms with it, I don't know where they all went. Maybe they went for lunch, but all of a sudden, I had the path to myself. They were probably just at lunch, but it was very interesting coincidence. The next time, I was thinking similar thoughts of, it was so busy, so crowded, everybody was now just pushing to finish the Camino or to get to the next step, and not interacting so much. It was kind of just head down walking. I was thinking the energy was changing, that I wasn't going to meet anybody else interesting along the way. And then I came to, a small town, took a selfie, and someone saw me, asked me if I wanted my photo taken, and I said no, thank you, and I showed them my selfie, which I was happy with. But then we walked together for the next hour or two, and we talked about our similar thoughts of how the Camino had changed, but how we were coming to terms with it. And it was interesting, and just a very interesting timing, that I was thinking I wasn't going to meet anybody else interesting, and then immediately I do, and not only, but I meet someone who's having the exact same types of thoughts. Coincidence, of course, but yeah, I have to also say that, yeah, magic kind of does happen on the Camino. And that's one of the things that makes the Camino one of these unique experiences. So what do I take from doing the Camino Primitivo? Was it worth it? It was not cheap. It was, the cost of a flight, the cost of the meals, the accommodation, physical toll, mental toll. Was it worth it? And I would say it was worth it. I would say that in some ways I am disappointed by the Camino. And I don't know if it's so much the Camino that I'm disappointed in, or my expectations of what the Camino would be after reading about the Camino, and I would say the marketing of the Camino, the hype of the Camino, and also talking to people who probably are also caught up in this hype of the Camino, who put like the expectation that it would change me or that I would learn from it or whatever. It was a good experience. I'll say this lesson that I learned, about putting some effort into developing inner strength. It's not a new lesson. I've learned that before. And what I can say is that the Camino also, although it was a unique experience, it was an experience similar to other unique experiences that I've had where, I'm physically and mentally challenged, to the point of exhaustion, but you continue to push yourself through it while dealing with, mental demons and physical pain. I've done those types of challenges before and had similar outcomes. So I would say what I got out of it isn't unique to the Camino, but it is still an opportunity for this type of unique experience. Yeah. There's one other thing. So I've said in a previous video that I'm very introverted, shy type of person, and it's weird being a YouTuber and putting my life out there. The two seem to not make sense. They're opposites. What I found, one of the greatest things about the Camino, and I talked to this with some of the people that I met along the way. And it's interesting because people keep coming back to do the Camino again and again. And one of the greatest things about the Camino was the people that I met along the way. And it's strange to say this as someone who, in my personal life, is pretty private. I don't go looking for friends. But along the way, you're walking, and it's long days walking, and like I've mentioned, you're in pain, and you got mental stuff going on. And you come across other people who are going through the same thing. And I don't want to say that we were supportive of each other, although we were, but it's more just that there's this community that happens because you recognize, you feel it, you have something in common, you're sharing this experience, all of it. You're all in pain, you're all hungry, You're all also dealing with the weather and everything that goes along with it. And you get to learn a little bit about each other's days and, a little bit about each other's lives. And, they call it the Camino family. And, I don't like to use the word family when talking about anyone other than family, but there is definitely an interesting bond that happens with people. Even after 14 days saying goodbye to some people that I'd met, it moved me emotionally, and that's, I'll say, pretty strange. But I would say that that is one of the best things of the experience, was that pushing myself outside of my comfort zone and allowing myself to share the experience with people that I don't know, while dealing with all of the other aspects of the Camino. I think that maybe I learned something about myself and, the importance of connecting with other people. Um, I don't know if I'll come back and do another Camino. I would still like to do Camino del Norte, but there's a big world out there that I'd like to see. But if I do come back to do another Camino, I know one thing that I would be looking forward to is meeting some of the, unique and interesting people along the way. In some ways, we had these beautiful views, but the friendships we were creating were so much more beautiful.